Yeah, Tom, people who want to wear masks feel strongly about it. So do people who do not want to wear masks. No one is making people take masks off. Nobody. But some are making people put masks on. So when you're forced to put a mask on and you don't want to, who do you blame? Do you blame the CDC or do you blame Democrats? I think people will blame Democrats. Will it have an impact on the election for governor in Michigan? How about the midterms? How about the presidential election in 2024? That's a long way out. Joining us now is Dave Dulio, director of the Center for Civic Engagement and political science professor at Oakland University. Hey, Dave, how are you?
I'm well, guys. How are you?
We're doing well. Thanks for asking. What are your thoughts on this issue? The Biden administration would have looked bad, I think, if they didn't support the CDC and say we're going to appeal this decision. But at the same time, if they appeal the CDC, if they make this appeal on behalf of the CDC and support it, the public can get mad at them.
Well, I think you make a good point. I think they're in a bit of a pickle, right? I mean, no matter what they do with this or what they decided, they were going to make somebody mad, right? If they don't challenge or appeal the decision, it would probably make some or even many on the sort of progressive side of the Democratic Party angry. And if they just left it in place, or if when they challenge it, they probably make some other folks angry more toward the middle. And of course, whether or not it stays or goes, I think is an important piece potentially come November, because it was seeming like we were just coming out of COVID. Things were relaxing. Cases are going down. Of course, we got some uptick now, but it may have been more in the rearview mirror in the fall than at any point since it started. But if this decision in this court process continues to play out maybe over the summer and through the fall, the closer we get to Election Day, before we have a decision on this, the more impact it's likely to have come November.
It's interesting because there's so many issues and so many things that might go into an approval rating or why someone might vote one way or the other, whether it's inflation or foreign policy, the economy. But the thing with these mandates, the mask mandates, is it's such a visual. It's so, I mean, you have to have that mask in your pocket and then you have to have it on your face and it's right there in your face. And I just wonder if that has more of an impact than maybe some of the other issues.
Well, that's interesting, and frankly, Kevin, I hadn't thought about that. But it is oftentimes in a deeply polarized environment in like the one we're in, right? People's beliefs or attitudes and sort of where they fall on that on the spectrum is hidden, right? Because they're just opinions and beliefs, but they are. It is a very visual cue these days with mask or no mask. And it's right in your face. It is very pronounced, and people will make snap judgments about the person many times just based on whether or not they're wearing a mask.
Gauging public support on this, White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki, she said those videos of people cheering when the pilot announced on the flight, the lifting of the mask mandate, it didn't reflect how people really feel when they were cheering, that it was just one plane load of passengers. But I don't know. I mean, if people really were for mandates, wouldn't we see far more people in other venues wearing masks all the time, like at stadiums or restaurants or movie theaters? Where do you think people stand on this?
I would like to see some robust polling data on this before I made a generalization about where the public is. But I think anecdotally, Tom, I think that's a fine point, right? If based on where people are at these days, right? They're making their own decisions in many places, especially here in Michigan, where there is no mandate in place, and there hasn't been for a while. But I think there is probably a slight difference between folks who are. I think some folks out there who would say, I'm not going to wear the mask if I don't have to, but if I have to, I'll do it. Right? I mean, they're just going to comply. And again, that's sort of maybe a middle ground between the two sides of this polarized issue.
Yeah, I agree. I think people are going to comply. Whether or not they believe it actually works, it might be a different story, but they're complying because that's the regulation and that's ostensibly the law. And in terms of how this all reflects on Biden, there's kind of a larger kind of question here, because when Biden was asked about this week if passengers should mask up, he said, well, it's up to them. And now it is. Psaki walked that back. She also walked back his desire to go to Ukraine and meet Zelensky. She said that we're not sending the president. The impression it leaves, at least to me, is that these statements that he makes and they walk them back, is they're kind of telling what Biden can and cannot say and what he can and cannot do, regardless of maybe his true feelings on the subject. Is there some truth to that, do you think, that he's maybe not as in control as normally a president is?
Well, I think the actions of the White House speak for themselves, right? I mean, this is just add this to the list of statements that the White House has had to walk back in the last month or so, right? I mean, there have been a number of them. And I think the other piece of it is, you know, I think that the public, whether or not Jen Psaki says that what he said was or was not a policy change, people hear the president and they take cues from the president. I think that no matter what courts decide on this, on masks on planes issue is it's going to be tough to put the toothpaste back in the tube and go back to this, especially when the public has heard the president say it's up to them, right? I think that it's just sort of this compounding problem for the White House that's going to continue to give him trouble, in the near future.
We only have a little time left, but as you look at this thing, progressives and moderate Democrats are still so far apart. Do you see one side giving in for the good of the party, or do you see them both digging in and going down in flames in the midterms?
Well, I think that it's shaping up to be a tough year for Democrats. Their biggest problem is going to be the president's approval ratings, which are going to feed into excitement or lack thereof for Democratic voters.
Yeah, it's a strange time, and we're going into what may be a very strange midterm. We appreciate your perspective. Dave Dulio, the director of the Center for Civic Engagement and political science professor at Oakland University. Dave, great to talk with you again. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thanks, guys.
All right, have a good weekend. 800-859-0957 is 800-859-0957.